Hello, today I'm going to talk about my game. My game is about fighting vampires, and as you can see, I have used two import statements, random and time. I've also included 5 functions, and I did this to make my code as efficient as possible and to avoid any repetition from happening. So let's start with the game function. So basically, the game function is an introduction to the game and it just gives background information. It also calls the practice and fight function within it. So at the beginning, the game function asks the user for its name, and using the for I in range loop, I've done string reconstruction and made the name backwards, and that becomes the battle name. And also the city, I've taken the first position of the string away, and that becomes the battle city. So at the beginning, if you choose yes to you wanna fight the vampires, then you are given a random score of 0 to 100, as you can see here, using the random.randint. And your score must be greater or equal to 100 to fight, and each time you train, your score increases by 50. So after that, you're asked if you want to train or fight, and I've used a while loop to ensure that if the user inputs anything other than train and fight, then the question will be asked again until a valid answer is inputted. So if the user chooses to train, then it calls the practice function, and the practice function is basically training and preparing the user for what's going to happen in the fight, battle, and reflex functions, which are basically the 3 levels of fighting. So there are 2 parts to this. There's a quick fact and a reflex part. So basically, the quick fact part, I'll go ahead and play this. So the first part is the program and prints a letter on the screen, and the user must print that same letter in a certain amount of time. I've done this using this code, and to calculate the amount of time it takes the user to input the correct letter, I've used the time.time function, and then I've also used a randomization of these letters so that not the same letter always pops up. So let's play this. So there's a countdown, and then it prints on the screen the letter, and then as you can see, you must enter the letter as fast as possible, and then if you do it fast enough and it's the correct letter, it'll print good job. If not, you enter the wrong letter or too slow. And then after that, it gives you quick facts that will be the user will be quizzed on in the fight function. So let's go back to the game function. So as I said, the score increases by 50 every time you train. Let's go back down here. Let's see what happens if the user let's go back here. If the user inputs fight and the score is less than 100, then basically this ensures that I restate that the user needs to train to fight, and I've set up a while loop to keep asking the user to train until it does, and then when the user inputs fight and the score is greater than or equal to 100, then as you can see here, the fight function is called. And the fight function is basically just a quiz, and these are the questions, and the user's quizzed on what the facts given here in the practice function. So basically, here are the questions, and then the user inputs their answer here, and then I've also made variables for correct and wrong. This is the amount of amount of questions the user gets correct and the amount of questions the user gets wrong. So then at the end of this function, if the user gets more correct than wrong, then it has a possibility, then it's able to move on to the next phase of fighting, which is the battle function. If the user has the same amount of correct and wrong, then using the random.randint here, 1 to 5, the user must pick a number between 1 to 5, and then if that number is correct, then they are able to battle, as you can see here. And if the user has more wrong than right, then the function, then they die and it goes back to the game function. So let's say the user got more correct than wrong, and they move on to the battle. So basically, this battle is just a maze, and at the beginning, it just tells the storyline where you are, and then asks you if you want to go left or right. And then as soon as you pick one of those, I've made a random.randint for a number of vampires, and this is the number of vampires that you will be fighting. And if the user, then that a user has the option to either run or fight. So here you can see if they choose run, then you use the random.randint again from 1 to 10, and they need to guess a number from 1 to 10. If they get the correct number, then they move on and they keep going through the maze. If not, they die. So if they choose fight, here you can see I've used the number of vamps in a for-i range loop. So if the number of vampires is 2, then the loop will run twice, and they have to complete this code twice. So basically, I have set up a punch, kick, and duck, and this 0 to 10 and 0 to 7 and 0 to 5 is the probability of the user missing the vampire. But as you can see here, if the user hits the vampire with a punch, then the vampire loses 10 from their health. And then let's say if the user gets that wrong number and that probability of missing the vampire, then the vampire hits the user and the user loses 10 from their health. And then if the user kicks the vampire, then the vampire loses 20. And then the same for if they miss the vampire. And then also, if the user chooses to duck, then they get 10 points added to their health, and if they miss that duck, then they get 10 subtracted from their points. So then this goes on, and there's more mazes, and basically the same thing throughout the function. And then, so basically at the end, if the health is still at greater than 0, then the user has the opportunity to move on to the next battle, the next level, which is Reflex. And this is basically the same thing as shown in the practice function, which was the random letter from these print on the screen, and the user must input the letter as fast as they can and the correct letter, and as I said before, I've calculated the amount of time using the time.time function. But in this scenario, instead of just printing good job, if you don't do it in time, then the enemy has time to hit you and your health goes down. So this is basically what I wanted to highlight in my code. So after if you die throughout these levels, then basically it just takes you back to the game function, and then it through a while loop asks you if you want to play the game again. Now I'm gonna tell you also what happens if you don't remember. At the beginning I said that the user gets to choose if it wants to fight the vampire or not. So if they choose no, then it's not as long of a game, but I've made a little game for them to have a bit of fun still. So basically it says the user gets vampire catches up to them, and then the program asks if they want to run or stay and fight. So this kind of trick, if they say they want to stay and fight, then it just says you did not get sufficient training and you were no match for the vampire. The vampire killed you, and then you're done. But if you say run, then you have a possibility of 0 to 50 using the random.randint of staying alive, and then it goes back to this again and loops through, says do you want to play again. Thank you for listening, and I hope this was a little bit insight into my game.